We've noticed something over the years, something that breaks our hearts and that we think breaks the heart of God too. It's no longer the norm that individuals or families have had a positive experience with church or any experience at all. So many of our neighbors and coworkers and friends and family members don't have any interest in the local church altogether. And we want to change that. Why? Because we believe when it's working right, the local church is the hope of the world. We believe that there really is no organization with as much potential to change hearts and transform lives and empower the next generation and make a lasting difference in the world as the local church. And so with God's help, we want to be a light in what may seem like a dark world. And we want that light to start shining right here in the St. Croix Valley. And if you think you're too far gone, we'd love to be the ones to tell you, God will always leave a light on. So whether you've been in church your whole life or have never stepped foot in church before, we're excited to open our doors to you and to welcome you to the place where real people and a real God meet. We're glad that you could be with us today.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Midcurrent Church. We are so excited that you are here. If you are a member here, we would love for you to squeeze into the middle and come on down front. You will really be able to hear well in this front row here. But we're so glad that you're here. We have a tremendous action-packed day for you. It's going to be a brief 4-hour service today, so we'll enjoy it. No, it's going to be an action-packed 60 minutes. We're so glad that you're here, and we'll get started soon. So get comfortable and settle in.
few days ago, it was Good Friday, which is funny because for everyone who was there that day, very little seemed good about it. In fact, today, that very same day that we remember as Good Friday is sometimes referred to as Black Friday. Not Black Friday as in the shopping frenzy that happens the day after Thanksgiving, but Black Friday as in the day the world went black. The day that darkness seemed to swallow up the entire earth during the moments that Jesus breathed his last breath on the cross. To his followers, this was the unimaginable and unthinkable sign of defeat, of loss, of failure, of discouragement, and ultimately of hopelessness. I wonder how many of you have ever felt a similar sting. I wonder how many of you have felt a similar darkness swallow you. Who knows? Maybe even right now, you're experiencing the agony of defeat, the pain of loss or of failure, or the paralyzing strike of doubt, discouragement, or a loss of hope. If that's you, you are not alone. In fact, we're really glad you're here today, and we've got some good news for you.
Great light dawns in Galilee. Some say madman, some say king. A wonder-working rebel priest, Jesus Christ of Nazareth. He knew well what it would take to set us free from sin and grave. A perfect man would have to die, and only he could pay that price. Friday's good 'cause Sunday's coming. Don't lose hope 'cause Sunday's coming. Devil, you're done, you better start running. Friday's good 'cause Sunday's coming. So we let those soldiers take him in, as his friend betrayed him with a kiss. And there before the mocking crowd, like a lamb to the slaughter, it made no sound. And he carried that cross to Calvary, and he shed his blood to set us free. And the nails went in and the sky went dark. The redemption of the world was on his heart. Friday's good 'cause Sunday's coming. Don't lose hope 'cause Sunday's coming. Devil, you're done, you better start running. Friday's good 'cause Sunday's coming. Then he breathed his last and bowed his head. The Son of God and man was dead. With bloody hands, tears on their face, they laid him down inside that grave. That wasn't the end. That wasn't the end. That wasn't the end. Let me tell you what happened then.
Yeah, hey, good morning to all of you here on site with us at Camp St. Croix. So good to have you here. Welcome to those of you online, and we want to wish you a very happy Easter. My name is Sten, and I'm the pastor here, joined by this dapper, young-looking man here.
My name's PJ. I'm a member here at Midcurrent, like many of you joining us today.
Yeah, and man, we're thrilled to have you here, and we're really glad to be the ones to announce and share the good news with you today that Sunday is not coming, but truthfully, Sunday is here today. And so we're thrilled to be here with all of you as well.
Instead, for me, there was something that struck me in particular about that video that we showed, and it was the line, "You are not alone." And I think in my life, whenever I've found myself going through something that I feel like is uniquely challenging to me, or I'm uniquely broken in some way, when I can muster the courage to share that with other people, I can receive a gift and find out that I am not unique. I am not that much different than everyone else, and I truly am not alone.
Yeah, that's a really powerful realization to come to, and that's a message we want to send to all of you here. You're not alone, no matter what you're going through. And that's exactly, I think, what makes the Easter message so good, right? What makes the Easter message good news is that it really is good news for all of us, no matter what it is that we are going through right now, no matter where it is we've been, or no matter what it is that we've done, or no matter how many times we've been in church before, no matter how many Bible verses that we've read or we've memorized in our lives. The good news is that the power that raised Jesus from the dead is the same power that is available to and that lives inside of you, inside of me. And that's really what it is that we are here to celebrate today, and we're thrilled to have all of you here with us. In a moment, I'm going to turn things over to Brian and the band, and they're going to lead us in a time of singing and of music, and these songs really are going to continue to tell the good news of Jesus and his victory over the grave that we are here to celebrate today. So I'm going to invite you to stand to your feet. I'm going to turn things over to Brian and the band as they lead us, and I know that they would be thrilled to have you join all of us in singing out here this morning. Once again, welcome to you. We're glad to have you here. Happy Easter to you.
Open the way. The day came, your light seemed to fear in our eyes, but the storm rolled away as he walked out of that grave. Let this place he run with praise. Why do you look for the living among the grave? has been broken, and this changes everything. The God of perfection became sin. The God of salvation changed everything. The day you gave your life, it seemed a failure in our eyes, but the storm rolled away as he walked out of that grave. Let this place be run with praise. Why do you look for the living among the grave? Jesus lives, and all the earth sing out. The power of death has been broken, and this changes everything. Because you live, our hope begins. Because you live, our song will never end. Because you live, now we can live. This changes everything, changes everything. Because you live, our hope begins. Because you live, our song will never end. Because you live, now we can live. This changes everything, changes everything. Let this place be run with praise. Why do you look for the living among the grave? Jesus lives, and all the earth sing out. The power of death has been broken, and this changes everything. Let this place be run with praise. Why do you look for the living among the graves? He lives. Jesus lives, and all the earth sing out. Power of death has been broken, and this changes everything. Our God, a firm foundation, our rock, the only solid ground. As nations rise and fall, kingdoms that once strong are shaken. We trust forever in your name, the name of Jesus. We trust the name of Jesus. You are the only King forever. Almighty God, we lift you higher. You are the only King forever, forevermore. You are victorious. You are the only King forever. Almighty God, we lift you higher. You are the only King forever.
Easter baskets and Cadbury eggs and frilly little girl dresses and death. Pastel cakes and ham dinners and Easter grass all over the house and grave clothes. We come to Easter celebrating Jesus in springtime, sort of, and it's easy, desirable even, to skip over the part of Jesus' life that was a bloodied body given in death for us. I'd rather not spend time thinking about embalming spices or the emptiness his followers felt when they realized he was not coming down off that cross triumphantly. That may be true of all of us. My son Leif, who is 10, asked me yesterday, "Mom, is it possible to be addicted to happiness?" "Yeah, honey, it is," I said. "Sometimes we don't want to spend time on the hard parts of our lives, so we chase only the things that make us happy. We don't make time to sit with the hard things. And our lives have plenty of hard things, don't they? Wounded hearts, busted up relationships, shallow bank accounts, depression, anxiety, and all manner of things that we can't control. We have our own darkness, our own dead and dying things. But the good news is that that's not the whole story, or it doesn't have to be. Jesus did come down off that cross triumphantly, conquering once and for always every evil, every dead thing for us, for all of eternity. Death was arrested, full stop. Which means our deaths and the dead things in our lives are not the full story. They aren't the truest thing about us. If you are brand new to Jesus today, he wants to give you the freshest, newest life possible because he loves you. And if you have been with Jesus for a while, he wants to infuse life back into any of the dead places because he loves you. Death doesn't win anymore. The dead things don't have to triumph over us anymore. He is alive, and we can be too, both now and forever. Won't you sing with us?
Alone in my sorrow and dead in my sin, lost without hope and no place to begin. Your love made way to let mercy come in. When death was arrested and my life began, ash was redeemed, only beauty remained. And my orphan heart was given a name. My mourning grew quiet and my feet rose to death. When death was arrested and my life began. Oh, your grace, so free, washes over me. You have made me new. Now life begins with you. It's your endless love pouring down on us. You have made us new. Now life begins with you. Released from my chains, I'm a prisoner no more. My shame was a ransom you faithfully bore. He canceled my debt and he called me his friend. When death was arrested and my life began. Oh, your grace so free darkness rejoice as though heaven had lost.
Song that say, death was arrested and my life began. Easter really is the day that made new life begin for you and for me, for all of mankind. And there's nothing that makes us smile more than hearing stories of people right here at Midcurrent who have found new life, who have found hope, and who have found worth in Jesus. And this morning, we want to share one of those stories with you now. So I invite you to be seated.
I grew up in a small town where there were just as many bars as there were churches. It was very fitting because the only message I ever seemed to hear in church was that it was my fault I was a sinner and that I needed to try harder. It was like sitting in those pews was the price we all had to pay for the bad choices we'd made each week. Many of the people I was surrounded by growing up either knowingly or unknowingly reaffirmed to me that I wasn't pretty enough, didn't have enough money, and wasn't worthy of love. So I went through life believing those things. I gravitated towards relationships with basically anyone who was willing because I didn't think I was good enough to be choosy about who I surrounded myself with. When relationships got tough, instead of communicating my needs, I simply escaped and didn't look back. It was almost like I pretended they never happened. I especially ran from a relationship with God because I figured, what was the point of trying if I was never going to be good enough? When I was in my 20s, I still felt very isolated, but I figured once I had the right job and a good marriage with a house and kids, that maybe then the constant void that I felt in my heart would be filled. Well, all of those things came to fruition. I worked in the finance industry, married an amazing man, and had 2 adorable children. I was literally never alone, and yet had never felt more isolated in my life. One day, I found myself at a women's networking event where I met Erica Carlson. She told me that she and her husband were planting a church in Hudson, and although I wasn't immediately planning on attending, we found ourselves walking through the doors of Midcurrent not long after that. I have to stop right here for a moment and admit that I did have other intentions. Truthfully, I wondered if getting connected with Sten, Erica, and their new church would help me professionally at the time. I'm not proud to admit that, but it's true. And yet, what I've realized is that I don't think that even mattered to God. I I can't help but think he just needed me to walk through those doors. And if I did, he could get my attention. And that's exactly what he did. I had never understood the messages I'd heard in church, but the ones I began hearing at Midcurrent made sense. They got me thinking, and they were practical. Instead of teaching me that I was a terrible person who God hated and wanted to punish, I started hearing the message that I was loved. I learned that of course I'm a sinner. We all are. That's why we were given the ultimate gift of Jesus. But Jesus didn't come to this earth to guilt trip us. He came to free us from our guilt and pain and suffering. He died to take it all on himself so that we wouldn't have to endure any of it. Erica Carlson ran MC Kids at the time that my daughter started in the preschool room on Sunday mornings, and I'll never forget the lines her team used for teaching the kids. God is a good God. He's in a good mood, and he is not mad at you. It was so freeing to realize that I was worthy of good relationships with God and with others in a way where I could honestly be myself and still be loved, or even be loved especially because I was being myself. As a result, I've been on a self-love journey these last few months, and I know that sounds cheesy, but I'm learning that we can only love others with what we already have inside ourselves. We can't show the love of Jesus to others until we believe that it is something we are worthy to receive. I am worthy, and so are you.
What an amazing story, and what great vulnerability for Krista to share with all of us like that. And stories like Krista's are what Midcurrent is all about. And this is the reason that we give back to Midcurrent. This is the reason my family gives back to Midcurrent, so that we can change people's lives, so that we can introduce more people to Jesus, so that we can create space for a real God and real people to meet. So we wanted to say thank you for all of you that are faithfully giving back to Midcurrent and making an impact in this community. If you call Midcurrent home, you can give back to stories like Krista's in all the usual ways, the collection box and all the easy, fast ways to give back as well. If you're new to Midcurrent or you're visiting us here today, your presence is all that we require, and we're so happy that you are here. The one thing that we would ask of you is that you take 30 seconds to fill out a connection card so that we can get to know you more and introduce you to what we have going on here. And I can speak from my own personal experience that 2 years ago, this connection card changed my life and the life of our family as we were new to the area here in the St. Croix Valley. So if you're looking for a place to call home, I would greatly encourage you to fill out one of these cards. The other thing that I would say is we invite you to come back. Come back and see us again. We're starting a brand new series next Sunday called This Is Us. You can learn all about the heartbeat here at Midcurrent Church, and you can learn more about what we do here. So that's it. There's nothing left for us to do except bring back Pastor Sten Carlson and his awesome Easter message.
It was in 1815 that France and England squared away in the famous Battle of Waterloo. The French troops were led by Napoleon Bonaparte, and the British troops were under the command of General Duke Wellington. And as the battle raged, and particularly as the battle came to an end, all of England anxiously awaited the news of the outcome of this battle. And if you can even imagine this is going to be shocking and horrifying to some of you. They didn't have Twitter. Didn't have Facebook. They didn't have 24-hour news cycles reporting on TV or online and streaming to every device and every person on the planet. And so in these days before electronic communication, significant developments or news of great occasion had to be passed on a different way, had to be passed on primarily by the word of mouth. And so in this particular instance, England relied on signalmen to pass along the message to one another, to spread the news of the outcome of the battle to all of the country. And so on June 18 of 1815, a signalman was placed on top of Winchester Cathedral. And he had one job, which was to keep watch out over the sea, because on board a British ship out at sea that day would be another signalman who was sending news to shore of the outcome of the battle. And when the signalman atop of Winchester Cathedral received the message, he was to pass on the message to another signalman on a hill down the line, who would pass it to another, who'd pass it to another, and another, and another, until the outcome of the battle was relayed to London and then ultimately to all of England. So at long last, a ship was spotted at sea through a dense layer of fog that was beginning to settle on the English Channel. And the signalman on board the ship sent the first word of the message to the signalman on shore. He started to spell out Wellington. And then a few seconds later, the next word of the message came through: defeated. And at that moment, the fog closed in, and it swallowed up the ship, which could no longer be seen from the shore. And the tragic message, Wellington defeated, was sent across all of England, and sorrow and gloom descended over the entire countryside. Right? This was not the news that anyone was expecting, and this is not the news that anyone had hoped to receive. However, a few hours later, the fog lifted, and the signalman out at sea was still sending a signal as to the outcome of this battle. He was sending the signal from out at sea, and it was coming through once again. Wellington defeated, it read again. And yet this time, the message included two additional words that were not spotted the first time around. This time it read, Wellington defeated the enemy. The first time around, they could only see half of the message. But this time around, they got the whole thing. And now the full news of the outcome of the battle went racing across the country again. But this time, the entire nation rejoiced. Friends, I share with you this little history lesson today because this story has the most striking parallels with the story of Jesus and with his death on a cross. At the moment that Jesus drew his last breath on the cross, every one of his followers plunged into the most profound sorrow. Jesus had just experienced the most tragic death, and the message began to spread to all of Jerusalem and beyond. Jesus defeated. And yet, 3 days later, we're told, the fog lifted. And the stone was rolled away, and the full message could finally be delivered. Jesus defeated the enemy. The full message was broadcast now to the entire first century world. Jesus defeated death. Jesus overcame the grave. And what is intriguing to me when I read some of the finer details, when I look closer at some of the finer details of this story, it's intriguing to me that God too, at the time of Jesus' death and his resurrection, God too seemed to have used somewhat of a signal, you could say, to alert the whole world of the outcome of Jesus' death on the cross. And the very same signal, depending on your point of view, it sent two drastically different messages. Take a look at this with me, because I don't want you to miss. I don't want you to only get half of the message that God is sending to you. So look at this. We're going to turn to the New Testament book of Matthew. And in case you're curious, Matthew is the one that wrote a letter, right? He was one of a few guys that wrote at what they experienced and what they saw, and it was all included in the book that is known as the book of Matthew. And Matthew writes about that very moment when Jesus was crucified, the day we call Good Friday. Take a look. It says, from noon until 3 p.m, darkness came over all the land. About 3 p.m, Jesus cried out in a loud voice, my God, why have you forsaken me? Why have you abandoned me? Right? This scene was bleak. Jesus' followers looked on in absolute disbelief. And here's what Matthew continues to write. And when Jesus had cried out again in a loud voice, he gave up his spirit. Right? He kind of throws in the towel, right? He's saying, that's all I can stand. Can't stand no more. Verse 51. It says, at that moment, the curtain of the temple was torn in two from the top to the bottom, and get this, the earth shook. The rocks split, and the tombs broke open. Okay? An earthquake strikes on that Good Friday and signals to the world the significance of the death that everyone just witnessed up on the cross. The whole earth, right? The entire natural world seemed to be responding to the horrific and to the tragic event that just took place. Jesus' followers scattered in fear and in sorrow. Jesus had just been defeated, and their hope had died along with him. But that wasn't the end of the story. 3 days later, we talked about this. 3 days later, the fog lifted. The full message would be delivered. Jesus defeated the enemy. And interestingly, this message, the full message, it was accompanied by the very same signal that set this whole chain of events into motion. Fast forward to Easter morning. Matthew writes this, early on Sunday morning, as the new day was dawning, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary went out to visit the tomb. Suddenly, there was a great, what? Earthquake. Suddenly, there was a great earthquake, for an angel of the Lord came down from heaven, rolled aside the stone, and sat on it. Here it is again. Earthquake on Friday, again on Sunday, right? God is using the natural world, it would seem, to send a message of the supernatural activity that was playing out before everyone's eyes. Now, just to be clear, earthquakes were not totally uncommon in this region due to the region's placement on top of a major seismic rift. So it wasn't uncommon. But Matthew records this here in a way, in a way to make sure. He records it in a way to make sure that we know that this is no coincidence. He says there was a great earthquake, for an angel of the Lord came down. The preposition for. There was a great earthquake, for the angel of the Lord came down. For meaning like alongside, like because of, as a result of the angel and the message that he was to deliver, there was an earthquake. Historians and biblical scholars, they suggest that it is the earthquake that the angel of the Lord used. It wasn't just a coincidence that it happened at the same time, but the angel used the earthquake to roll the stone that sealed the tomb away. Same signal that triggered devastation on Friday is now used to testify to an even greater event of far greater and divine magnitude. Now, I want to caution us for just a second here not to create too picturesque a scene here of Easter morning, right? Because of all the happy vibes of Easter, I think it's tempting to assume that this was a really nice and peaceful scene, right? It's tempting to picture that on that Sunday morning, the sun is shining, the birds are chirping, pretty little Easter lilies are blooming, and the soft rumble of the ground that rolled the stone away was also the same rumble that shook the jelly beans loose that had been stuffed in the green plastic Easter grass that was packaged around the tomb that day. The Bible doesn't say for sure, it doesn't give any specifics here, but I'm not sure it's all that peaceful. Okay, I don't know for sure, but I'm not sure that there can be an earthquake. I'm not sure that the ground can shake so violently that a massive stone is pushed to the side. I'm not sure any of that can happen without it being a terrifying, jaw-dropping, knee-buckling experience. These kind of natural phenomenons, regardless of who caused them, this is scary stuff. I'll be honest for a second here. I remember as a kid, we had just moved to the plains of Illinois. We now had to be worried about tornadoes. Okay, I was a kid. I was scared of thunderstorms. I kid you not. I would have to come home from a sleepover. If I was at a friend's house, if it started to thunder and lightning, mom and dad had to come get me. Okay, I can remember the first tornado warnings. These tornadoes were a whole nother deal. I remember the first tornado warning that we'd ever experienced. My older brother and I, down into the basement, we built a barricade with empty moving boxes that had still been laying around, and we put all the laundry baskets over our head. Okay, these natural phenomenons are no joke. They are destructive, scary forces. An earthquake is no different. I don't think that there is a calm and a peaceful way to experience one. That's why it's interesting to me. It's interesting to me that on Easter, day that changed everything for you and me, it's interesting to me that on Easter, what is understood to be a tool of destruction was used as a tool, was used to help aid in the good news of the resurrection. What is understood to be a force that destroys life was actually the force that played a major part in springing new life from the grave. Friends, if we can zoom from that moment there all the way out to you and to me today, I can't help but want to suggest that maybe the same thing is true. I can't help but wonder if the same thing is true, that the things that we assume, that all would assume, that most would assume, that many would assume, we're meant to destroy. All the things that we're meant to destroy were very well. Maybe it's true for us that those very same things very well could be the things that are designed to snap us back to life again. See, it seems to me that Easter is teaching us that when we follow after Jesus, here's what I want us to understand, that sometimes when we follow after Jesus, that sometimes it's the things that shake the ground beneath our feet, that break the chains, that pin us to the ground in the first place. Right? When we're Jesus following Easter kind of people, sometimes it's the very things that shake the ground underneath us, rattles the ground underneath our feet, that actually break the chains, that pin us down, that hold us down, that keep us buried in the grave. Folks, Easter is teaching us something powerful here, that even when the ground is shaking, God very well might still be working. Even when the ground is shaking, even when your world is shaking, God very well might be at work. See, I don't think many of us are naturally wired to make that connection. So I think we have a hard time understanding that something good can come from something hard. We have made ease and comfort and pleasure our ultimate goal today. So if something is hard, we just assume, well, surely it's not good, right? As soon as something is hard or uncomfortable or challenging or painful or sad, we assume, well, it must not be very good then, right? And here's the problem with that. We only got half the message, and yet we already made up our minds, and we determined that it was not good. And so we run away from it. We run away from what was ever hard or whatever was challenging or painful, right? We try to change whatever doesn't feel right. And all that means is we end up changing jobs, we change hometowns, we change houses, we change spouses, we change churches, all in an effort to prevent the ground from ever shaking beneath our feet. But I got to tell you, once again, what I think we see playing out on the hillside of Golgotha is that sometimes it truly is the things that shake the ground underneath our feet. It's the things that shake some of the very foundations that we've built our life on, that can be the very same things that break the chains and that roll the stone away, that kept us buried in the ground in a grave of our own. Friends, when the ground shakes, and believe me, it's gonna, when the ground shakes beneath our feet, and if it hasn't yet, I think it's gonna shake. Some of you know that, right? When the ground shakes beneath our feet, let's be people that hold out for the entire message that might be coming our way. See, folks, the amazing news of Easter is that it demonstrates emphatically the truth that God is in the business of turning tragedy into triumph. That's what we see here. We have to understand, whatever it is we're going through right now, we've got to understand that God is in the business of turning tragedy into triumph. This was the case at the resurrection. The cross became a tool of God's amazing love for us and of life-saving rescue. Tragedy turned triumph. This was the case at the resurrection. It's the same thing that has been true throughout all of history and God's activity in the world. Think about it. God delivers Daniel from the lion's den when everybody around braced themselves for the gruesome death they assumed was waiting for him in the pit. Didn't happen. Tragedy turned triumph. God split the waters of the Red Sea into two when the Israelites were running for their life and they hit a dead end and enemy forces were in hot pursuit. Tragedy. What are we going to do? Triumph. God made a way. Right? God elevated Joseph to the second highest position of leadership in all of Egypt, and he used Joseph to skillfully lead all of Egypt through a devastating 7 years of famine. And Joseph helped save the lives of thousands of people, despite the fact that Joseph ended up in Egypt in the first place because his older brothers hated him. They left him in a pit to die. They eventually sold him off as a slave to a bunch of random dudes traveling by. And when he was a slave in Egypt, he was wrongly accused of assault and thrown into prison in a foreign land. Sounds slightly tragic to me. You want to know what Joseph said to his brothers when all this was over and when they stood face to face almost, a decade or so later? You want to know what he said to his brothers? He said, "It's all good, boys. You meant it to harm me, but God meant it for good. For the saving of many lives. You meant it to harm me, but God meant it for good." I think Joseph, in all his faithfulness, I think he knew, even if he couldn't have written it all out like this, even if he couldn't have predicted every little moment, I think that he knew that even when the ground was shaking, even when his world was rocking, I think he knew that God would still be working. This is amazing. His prison sentence, we can't lose this. His prison sentence, if you know the story, is his own prison sentence. He shouldn't have been there. But it was that very prison sentence that would give him an audience with the one man who could actually set him free, that was Pharaoh, and the one man, still Pharaoh, that could actually set him up to lead courageously at a time when Egypt desperately needed a leader most. It's amazing. I think Joseph knew deep in his bones that he served a God who could turn tragedy into triumph. So he never waved the white flag. Folks, I want to make the same appeal to you today. Let's not be so quick to wave the white flag and to move on in defeat. See, I wonder where. I don't know for sure, but I wonder where it feels like the ground is maybe shaken under your feet. I wonder where it feels like there's tragedy in your life right now, pain, hardship, difficulty. I want to tell you, it may not be the end. It could be just the first half of the message that God is sending. It could be just the first chapter of the story that God is writing. I'm not trying to make light of tragedy or anything hard in your life. I'm not saying it's all good, folks. It all has a happy ending. It doesn't always, at least not on this side of heaven. Some of it is just the unfortunate result of the broken world in which we live. But for all the rest of it, I don't want tragedy to give you or anyone else. I don't want tragedy to send any mixed messages. What if the tragedy, not trying to say it's easy, not trying to make light of it, I'm not trying to say, buck up. All I'm saying is, man, what if the tragedy, what if the hardship, what if the struggle, what if the defeat, what if the failure that we experience today, what if it was the very tool that God was using? I'm not saying it's the tool that God, is I'm not saying God's causing any of it, but what if it's the tool that God was using to pave the way for triumph that was indeed possible on the other side? What if it was the tool? What if the tragedy was the tool that God was using to lead you to triumph? What if the job that you just lost was a necessary tragedy? And trust me, I'm not making light of this. That's a tragic deal. But what if the job that you just lost, what if it was the necessary tragedy to steer you onto the path of God's true and ultimate calling for you that you would have never discovered otherwise? What if the breakup you just lived through, as much as it just like rocked your world, what if it was the necessary tragedy that God would use to help you discover, number one, that you are worth so much more, and number two, that you have so much more to offer than this deal? There was so much more. What if the death in your family, trust me, this hard stuff, I've lived through it. What if the death in your family was, what if it was the ultimate tragedy that God would still use to bring about new life somewhere, somehow? What if the death in the family was just a tool that God would use to reunite a family that was in desperate need of coming together and writing a new chapter together in their family history and their legacy? What if the tension in your family right now, and I know none of you have tension in your family, so maybe this one won't land here, but I don't know. What if the tension in your family or your extended family right now, what if it was just a hurt that God was using to alert you all to the potential for healing? What if God was saying, hey, pay attention to that feeling, because tragedy can still be triumph, right? What if your recovery journey, as shaky as it feels right now, as shaky as you feel in the midst of it, what if it was the pain that God would use to end generations of addiction in your family? What if that train stopped with you? What if the darkest chapter in your life became the survival guide that someone else needed to make it through the darkness in their own life? Folks, when we live as Easter kind of people, when we stake our claim on the claim of Jesus and his victory over the grave, we've always got to wait for the fog to lift. Tragedy and disappointment and failure and loss and heartache on Friday, it's never the end. It's never the end. It might just be the first half of the message. It might just be the first chapter that God is writing for you. So, when we're Easter kind of people, when our eyes are fixed on Jesus, when our hearts are aligned with Jesus, we never give up. We never give in. We never wave the white flag in defeat, because Sunday is always coming. Let me pray. God, we give you thanks for this day, the day that changed everything. God, the greatest day truly in history. God, what amazing news that while we were still sinners, man, you came to our aid. You came to our rescue, and you sent your son Jesus to this earth for us. God, and not only did you send him to die, but you rose him from the grave, demonstrating once and for all of the power that you hold over death, over the grave. God, we give you thanks. And God, we know too that the power that did raise Jesus from the dead is the same power that's available to us when we open our hearts to you. So God, we thank you for this day. We thank you for the good news. The tragedy can still be triumph, God, and we're praying for triumph, for victory in our lives, in the places that hurt the most. And we pray these things in your name. Amen. Hey, the promise of a God who does turn tragedy into triumph, it is made most perfect for those who put their faith in Jesus. For those of us who believe that truly the power that raised Jesus from the dead is the power that lives in us. It is made most perfect, this promise, for those of us who have raised our hand and said yes to Jesus. And if you have never said yes to Jesus, you've never given your heart, you've never given your life over to this resurrected King, I want to invite you to do that today. In fact, right now, before you walk on out of here, I want to just give you a moment. And maybe you would just pray silently to yourself a prayer that sounds something like this. Maybe you just say, Jesus, I trust in you. And I understand now fully of the love you have for me that meant you would give up your life for me. And in response here today, I give you my life. I give you my heart, and I say yes to following after you. If that's a prayer that you are praying in any way here today, we would love to know, because we would love to be cheering for you wildly, and we would love to be coming alongside you in any way that we can. In fact, we'd love to have you let us know. You can come find me. I'll be hanging here. If this is you, you don't have to say anything more to me than just I said yes, and we'll figure out how to come alongside you. And if you don't want to come talk to me face to face, then all you got to do is you got to send an email, 3 words, I said yes, to yes@midcurrentchurch.org, and we will just celebrate with everything we've got inside of us, and we'll be excited to follow up with you. At the same time, if you're in need of prayer this morning, there'll be someone from our prayer team available to pray with you before you walk on out of here to all of the Easter festivities. And with that, I just want to say thanks so much for being here. Happy Easter to all of you, and we hope and pray that we would see each of you right back here next week at 9 or 10:30 for the very first week in our series, This Is Us. We'd be so glad to have you there. Have a great afternoon. Happy Easter. God bless you. Mm-mm.